Imagine a small village nestled in the green hills of Guatemala. That's where Miguel grew up, helping his family farm corn and beans. Life was simple, but it was hard. He dreamed of a better future, one where he could earn enough money to help his family back home. So, with a brave heart and a small bag, Miguel traveled far away to the United States. He heard stories of jobs on big farms, where he could earn more money than he ever had before. He arrived, eager to work hard and make his dream come true. The farm was big, with rows and rows of crops stretching as far as the eye could see. Miguel was assigned to pick tomatoes, working long hours under the hot sun. He was a strong and dedicated worker, always trying his best to fill his buckets. He missed his family terribly, but knew he was doing this for them. Every day was a struggle, but he kept his head down and worked hard, hoping for a brighter tomorrow. He made some friends among the other workers, sharing stories and dreams during their short breaks. They all understood the sacrifices they were making. But the farm wasn't the paradise Miguel had imagined. The equipment was old and broken. One day, a ladder he was using to reach the higher tomatoes snapped, sending him tumbling to the ground. Luckily, he wasn't seriously hurt, but it shook him up. He told the foreman, the person in charge, but the foreman just shrugged and told him to be more careful. The drinking water was often dirty, and there weren't enough restrooms for all the workers. Many people got sick with stomachaches. The sun beat down mercilessly, and there was little shade. Miguel and his friends tried to protect themselves with hats and long sleeves, but it was still hard to bear. The hours were long and tiring. They started work before sunrise and didn't finish until after sunset. Miguel's back ached, and his hands were sore from picking tomatoes all day. Sometimes he felt so tired he could barely stand, but he kept going, remembering his family back home and the money he needed to send them. He knew they were counting on him. But the worst part wasn't the hard work or the unsafe conditions. It was the stolen wages. Miguel and his friends had been promised a certain amount of money for each bucket of tomatoes they picked. But when payday came, the boss always seemed to find a reason to pay them less. He would say the tomatoes weren't ripe enough, or that the buckets weren't full enough, even when they were. Miguel started keeping track of his buckets, carefully counting each one. He knew he was being cheated. He talked to his friends, and they were experiencing the same thing. They were working so hard, but they weren't getting the money they deserved. It felt unfair and discouraging. One evening, after a long day of work, Miguel sat with his friends under a tree. They shared stories of how much money they were shorted and how difficult it was to send money home to their families. They felt trapped and helpless. They wondered if there was anything they could do to stop the boss from stealing their hard-earned money. The feeling of injustice weighed heavily on their hearts. They knew they had to find a way to fight back. After much discussion, Miguel decided to take a big risk. He had heard about a government agency that helped workers who weren't being treated fairly. It was a scary thought, going up against his boss, who seemed powerful and untouchable. But he knew he had to do something, not just for himself, but for all his friends and coworkers. He found a phone number for the agency, and, with the help of a friend who spoke better English, he made a report. He explained about the broken equipment, the dirty water, and, most importantly, the stolen wages. He told them everything, hoping they would listen and help. Making the report was a nerve-wracking experience. He worried about what his boss would do if he found out. Would he be fired? Would something even worse happen? But he also felt a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could finally change for the better. He knew it was a gamble, but he was willing to take it for the chance of a fair life. He kept the report a secret from most people, only confiding in a few trusted friends. They promised to support him, no matter what happened. Just a few days later, before the agency had even had a chance to investigate, everything changed. Miguel was getting ready for work early in the morning when there was a loud knock at the door. He peeked through the curtains and saw several people in dark uniforms standing outside. He didn't recognize them. His heart started to race. He slowly opened the door, and the officers quickly stepped inside. They asked for his name and then told him he was under arrest. They were ICE agents. Miguel was stunned. He didn't understand what was happening. He hadn't done anything wrong. He asked why he was being arrested, but the agents didn't give him a clear answer. They just told him to pack a bag and come with them. He was scared and confused. He quickly grabbed a few belongings, his hands shaking. As he was led out of his small apartment, he saw his friends watching from a distance, their faces filled with fear and worry. He knew his life was about to change in a big way. He didn't know where they were taking him or what was going to happen next. The hope he had felt just days before was now replaced with a chilling dread. What Miguel didn't know was that his boss had found out about the report he had made. Enraged that Miguel had dared to speak out against him, the boss decided to retaliate. He called ICE and reported Miguel, knowing that Miguel didn't have the right papers to be working in the United States. It was a cruel and calculated move, designed to punish Miguel for standing up for his rights. The boss thought he was getting rid of a troublemaker, someone who was threatening his ability to exploit his workers. He didn't care about the fairness of it all, only about protecting his own profits. He felt justified in his actions, believing that Miguel had betrayed him. Meanwhile, Miguel sat in a cold detention center, wondering what he had done to deserve this. He felt betrayed and alone. He thought about his family back home and worried about what they would think. He had come to the United States to help them, but now he was in jail, facing an uncertain future. The boss's revenge had struck a deep blow, leaving Miguel feeling lost and helpless. But what the boss didn't realize was that Miguel was protected by a special law. This law is called whistleblower protection. It's designed to protect workers who report illegal or unsafe activities at their workplace. The law says that employers can't punish or retaliate against these workers. When the government agency that Miguel had contacted learned about his arrest, they were shocked. They knew that Miguel had filed a report about the farm's unsafe conditions and stolen wages. They also knew that it was against the law for the boss to call ICE on him in retaliation. The agency contacted a group of lawyers who specialized in helping workers like Miguel. The lawyers quickly realized that Miguel had a strong case. They believed that his arrest was illegal because it violated the whistleblower protection law. They decided to take on Miguel's case and fight for his rights. They knew it would be a difficult battle, but they were determined to help Miguel get justice. They explained to Miguel, in simple terms, that the law was on his side. This gave him a small spark of hope in the darkness. The lawyers started working hard to build Miguel's case. They gathered evidence of the unsafe conditions on the farm, talked to Miguel's co-workers, and documented the stolen wages. They showed that Miguel had acted bravely and responsibly by reporting the problems. They argued in court that Miguel's arrest was a clear act of retaliation, a direct result of his report. They explained the purpose of the whistleblower protection law, to encourage workers to speak up about wrongdoing without fear of being punished. They said that if employers were allowed to call ICE on workers who reported problems, no one would ever come forward, and illegal activities would continue to go unchecked. The lawyers also pointed out that Miguel was a valuable member of the community, a hardworking person who was simply trying to make a better life for himself and his family. They asked the judge to release Miguel from detention and allow him to continue his fight for justice. They emphasized that his case was important, not just for Miguel, but for all vulnerable workers who deserve to be treated fairly and with respect. They hoped the judge would see the injustice of the situation and make the right decision. News of Miguel's story began to spread. People were shocked and outraged that a worker who had bravely reported wrongdoing was being punished for it. Many felt it was unfair and unjust. Newspapers and television stations picked up the story, highlighting the dangers faced by vulnerable workers and the importance of protecting their rights. People from all walks of life began to speak out in support of Miguel. They wrote letters to the government, organized protests, and donated money to help with his legal fees. Miguel's friends and co-workers also rallied around him. They shared their own experiences of working on the farm and confirmed the unsafe conditions and stolen wages. They stood together in solidarity, demanding justice for Miguel and better treatment for all workers. The public outcry put pressure on the government to investigate Miguel's case and hold the boss accountable for his actions. People wanted to know why ICE had arrested Miguel and whether they had followed the proper procedures. They demanded that the government protect whistleblowers and ensure that all workers were treated with dignity and respect. Miguel's story became a symbol of the fight for workers' rights and the importance of standing up against injustice. Miguel's case raised important questions about how ICE was being used. Many people began to wonder if ICE was being used unfairly to punish workers who spoke out against their employers. They argued that ICE should be focusing on serious criminals, not on people who were simply trying to make a living and report wrongdoing. Some people even suggested that ICE was being used as a tool by unscrupulous employers to silence their workers and prevent them from demanding fair treatment. They said that this was a misuse of power and that it undermined the principles of justice and fairness. The debate over ICE's role became heated. Some people defended ICE, arguing that they were simply enforcing the law. Others argued that ICE's actions were harmful and discriminatory, and that they were creating a climate of fear and intimidation among immigrant communities. The controversy surrounding Miguel's case forced people to confront difficult questions about immigration, workers' rights, and the role of government agencies. It sparked a national conversation about the need for reform and the importance of protecting vulnerable workers from exploitation and abuse. The question of how best to balance law enforcement with human rights became central to the discussion. Despite the challenges and the uncertainty, Miguel refused to give up hope. He knew that his fight was not just for himself, but for all the other workers who were being exploited and abused. He drew strength from the support he was receiving from the community, his friends, and his lawyers. He spent his days in the detention center reading books about workers' rights and learning more about the laws that were supposed to protect him. He wrote letters to his family back home, telling them about his situation and assuring them that he was doing everything he could to fight for justice. He also met with other detainees, sharing his story and offering them encouragement. He became a symbol of hope for them, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, it was possible to stand up for what was right. Miguel knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was determined to see his case through to the end. He believed that if he fought hard enough, he could not only win his own freedom, but also help to create a more just and equitable society for all workers. He held on to the belief that good would eventually triumph over evil. What happens next is up to all of us. Miguel's story reminds us that even one person can make a difference. We can all help to protect vulnerable workers like Miguel by learning about their rights and speaking out against injustice. We can support organizations that are working to defend workers' rights and provide legal assistance to those who have been exploited. We can also contact our elected officials and urge them to pass laws that protect whistleblowers and prevent employers from retaliating against workers who report wrongdoing. It's important to remember that every worker deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their immigration status. We must stand together and fight for a world where all workers are safe, fairly paid, and free from exploitation. Miguel's courage in the face of adversity is an inspiration to us all. Let us honor his bravery by taking action to create a more just and equitable world for all workers. Even small actions, like sharing Miguel's story, can help to raise awareness and promote change. Let's all be a part of the solution. The fight for workers' rights is a fight for human rights. Let's remember Miguel. Let's remember his bravery and his hope. His story isn't just his story. It's a story that reflects the struggles of many hardworking people who come to this country seeking a better life. His fight is a reminder that we all have a responsibility to create a more just and fair society for everyone. It's a reminder that we must stand up for those who are being exploited and abused, and that we must hold those who are responsible accountable for their actions. To learn more about workers' rights, you can visit the website of the Department of Labor. You can also find information and resources at the websites of various nonprofit organizations that advocate for workers' rights. Talk to your friends and family about Miguel's story. Share it on social media. Write letters to your elected officials. Every action, no matter how small, can help to make a difference. The fight for workers' rights is a fight for human dignity. It's a fight for a world where everyone is treated with respect and fairness. It's a fight that we must all be a part of. And by working together, we can create a world where stories like Miguel's are no longer necessary. We can build a future where all workers are protected and valued.